Hey friends, in a previous video I had mixed down one of my tracks and I had promised you guys that we'll be mastering this track as well. Well, that's what today's stream is about. I have actually made a custom mastering chain using Ableton's stock devices, which will be available on my Gumroad, which is live now, which you can download totally for free. You can download this chain, implement it on your masters and on your mixes, and try and make a homemade master that you can road test on various speakers or in a club even. And of course, at the end, what it does best is gives you an idea of what your master will sound like after it's been done professionally. Because essentially, what a master will do is it brings out every decision that you've made in a mixdown, especially your mistakes. So chains like these, which I have been researching for a while, are a great way to not just understand mastering, but a great way to even improve your mixes as well. So without much further ado, let's jump into it. So here we are inside Ableton, and as you can see, the track that I was mixing down previously is loaded up in this audio channel over here. Along with that, obviously you can see this chain that I've made, which I was talking about earlier, is the custom mastering chain that I've made using Ableton stock devices. Now, this chain is again inspired by a lot of other improvised mastering chains that I've seen myself, and I've taken inspiration and bits and pieces from a bunch of them and put it together in the way I like it. So I hope you guys can download it. Again, it is available for free on my Gumroad. The link for that will be in the description below. Please download it, check it out, and I would love to know your feedback. But yeah, coming back to how to use it, it's basically a very straightforward mastering chain where you go in a very linear fashion and you just start turning knobs one by one. And you start over here basically, and you go from left to right here this way, and then you go from left to right here this way. So by the time you finish this layer and then you finish this layer and you end up at the last limiter over here, you should have a pretty decent sounding master. That's the goal, and that's the approach that I've taken while making this track. So let's start off by listening to this track and making some changes while we do it. Now, obviously, for tracks that don't really have a lot of bass, maybe I'd like a little bit of a bass boost. So what I'll do is I'll just crank up the bass boost a little bit just to give the bass a little bit more presence, a little bit more body. Now with bass enhancement, there's always mud. So for clearing of mud, I have created this mud, which is basically a notch EQ, and it travels between 150 to about 500 hertz. So that's generally the region where a lot of the muddiness arises from, especially in the low mids. So what we'll do is we'll use this knob to isolate the muds as best as we can. So around here is, I feel, where the muddiness is the most, and it instantly improved the clarity of the track as soon as I got it around this zone, around 255 hertz. So this is something you can test and do it as per your listening environment and your ears. Next, we have a clarity knob that basically focuses a little bit more on the high mids and the highs and enhances them in a certain way. So yeah, that's the clarity, and it's basically a knob that adds a little bit more air and a little bit more sparkle to your track as well. Now next up we have a bite knob. Now this bite knob is basically a combination of a couple of things, but a majority of the processing of the bite knob is coming from the Ableton's OTT. That's basically a preset of Ableton's multiband dynamics. And I've done a bit of tweaking in terms of crossover points and the amount of compression and stuff like that. But basically it's focusing on adding that extra excitement and that extra bite to the track. So hence it's called bite. So let's dial it up and see what happens. So I like it there. I don't want to overdo it with the bite. The next thing generally a lot of mastering engineers do is if there is not a lot of stereo width in your mix, they will add a little bit of stereo width provided that it still stays in phase and doesn't cause any phase issues. So I have provided a very standard width knob which uses some very basic stereo widening techniques. So as you can see, as you dial up the width knob, it adds a lot of sparkle and shine to the sides of your mix. And obviously, because of that, you might feel that the mids are getting a little compromised. Hence, to counteract the width knob, I have added a depth knob, which again brings the focus back to the center of the mix. So I'm going to dial this again. Yeah, so I think that's creating a good balance between the information in the center of the mix as well as the sides of the mix without overdoing anything. So that's a quick way to get that going. Now that we've actually covered these few knobs here, that the 6 knobs here, they're basically tonal shaping and character enhancement of the track. Next, we're going to get to the dynamics and the dynamics and clarity and color of the track is what we're going to be focusing on next. Now, one of the things obviously is a big part of mastering is compression. So I have provided you a compression, a way to compress your track and catch the peaks as well as make the mix sound more consistent using these 2 knobs here. That's the stick and raise. Now, stick is basically doing a bit of compression and the raise knob is providing some makeup gain so that whatever volume loss happens while you compress, you are able to get it back using the raise knob. So let's use these 2 knobs and give our track a bit of compression and catch those peaks. Now, because this mix and this track is has a bit of compression and peak reduction already going on during the mix down, if you want to check that out, I will link the mix down video above, so you can check it out. It'll be in the description below. But I think for the time being, the amount of compression we're doing right now is good enough. Maybe a little bit more. I'll dial it in. Now, if you'd like to tweak the attack and release, you can obviously go into the chain and you'll see the list of devices given here. You can go into any device and customize it even further if you like. You obviously have the freedom to do that once you download the rack, of course. Now, of course, with compression comes gain reduction, and gain reduction is loss of volume. So because of that, we may have to compensate for that loss of volume. So I'll just go down in compression further and compensate for that by increasing it by about 2 to 3 dB over here. Let's say about 3 dB. Next, we have a knob that's called soak. That's basically enhancing the lot of the lows and mids that may have gone sidetracked a bit or lost their energy over the course of the processing that we've done. So it is basically a form of saturation that's being added to your track. So it gets a little bit of color, a little bit of attitude. Yeah, I would suggest if you can be subtle with it. I have provided a wide range of this saturation so that if you want a much more aggressive color and saturation and enhancement of the lows and low mids, it is available to you. But for our intents and purposes at the moment, I will be a little subtle with the soak knob. And I'll show you what I mean by the exaggerated frequency. Yeah, that's definitely not something what we want for this track. Yeah, maybe about there should be fine. Now, after this, we also have a chop feature. Now, as the more perceptive of you would have guessed, the chop is nothing but a clipper. It's going to chop off anything that crosses a certain threshold. And I've set that threshold to 0. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to open this up and I'm going to show you the clipper that I've made. And I've made it using Ableton Saturator. It's basically a soft clipper, and I have mapped the same one knob, the chop knob, to the drive and the output, and they're moving in an inverse fashion. So as soon as I turn up the chop knob, you can see that the drive and the output knob are moving in an inverse way. They're moving opposites. They're the opposite of each other, which you can very easily do, by the way, using the map feature inside any audio effect track or instrument track. Now that indicator that you see over there is what I need. That's what I'm going to be looking at, because I don't want that indicator going too hard, and just a very subtle amount of clipping is what I need. Now, without even turning up the chop knob, there is a bit of clipping happening already. So what I'll do is I'll turn it up just a bit, maybe about 5% or 10%, let's say. Just so that, just till the point where it's giving a decent amount of clipping, without losing a lot of the sample rate and a lot of the harmonic information that's there in the track, as well as not adding distortion. That's one of the main goals of using clipping in a subtle way, right? So what we'll do is maybe go up a little bit more. Yeah. So as you saw, as soon as I crossed about 18-20%, it started giving me some subtle distortion, which I'm able to hear. So I'm going to back off and keep it at like maybe 10 or 12%. I don't want to go anything above that. Even that's a bit. Now, the reason why we're doing clipping is we're basically giving a little bit of support to the compressor. That's the glue compressor, basically, which is catching the peaks and making the volume more consistent. This is helping with that. It's catching the peaks and making the volume even more consistent. But yeah, I would suggest please be very subtle with the clipping that you do. Otherwise, you will start to hear some distortion. Now, I'll just go over to the session view. As you can see, we've got pretty healthy RMS, and we are now approaching the 0 dB point, which is the peak value which we're going to hit for our master. And for that, instead of using one limiter, I've split that job in between two limiters, so that one limiter is not overburdened with gain reduction as well as increasing and maximizing the volume. And by doing that, I have drastically reduced the chance of distortion occurring and my mix and master getting spoiled. So what I'm going to do is, again, be very subtle with this. I'm going to provide maybe a 2 dB gain here and maybe a 1 dB gain over here, and that should do it. So it looks like we're hitting about -6 dB and just a little below that, which I think is a pretty good number to hit. But again, the LUFS that you see on a loudness meter is just one of the indicators of how healthy your master is. Of course, it also depends on the way you've mixed your track at the end, what defines how competitive your track is on a dance floor when it's played on big systems, along with other tracks that are produced at a professional level. So this is just one indicator. And but yeah, I am happy with the number that we're getting over here, and I'm not gonna overdo it with the limiting. I'm just gonna keep it subtle. And yeah, that's a quick demo of this rack, of this mastering rack. I obviously have provided three different starting points, jellyfish, manta, and shark, which are basically three different kinds of masters, each getting more progressively intense as you go further down the list. So check them out. Check out this rack. Download it for free. Once again, it is available on my Gumroad, the link for which is provided in the description of this video. And I hope you guys enjoyed it. Make sure you download this rack and please give me your feedback, because if there are any changes, anything I can work on to make the rack better for you, I'd be very happy to do that. So please make sure you drop me a DM or drop a comment on this video, and hope to see you guys in the next video again. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. See you guys again next time. Bye.